Conversations that you don't want to have with your family. I'm Chris, and this is my dad, Steve.
Howdy.
Today, we're not really going to be solving any of the world's problems. We'll try, but it's not going to happen. There's too many, and I don't care. Uh, Dad, it's been a week. What's been going on in your life? What's been on your plate?
Wow. There's obviously still school, but there's the biggest thing. There's two things that have really been on my plate. So the biggest thing is gout. I don't know if you've ever heard of gout.
Gout?
Gout. It's an old person
Like of your
disease.
feet?
Yeah, that's what's weird. Gout is a weird thing, man, because it's actually a condition of your kidney
Okay.
that your your kidneys don't filter out all of the solids from your blood, the solid waste.
Okay.
So what that does is so they're still in your blood, right?
And it
Well,
pools because of gravity, I would imagine.
the lowest point of your blood pressure is in your left toe. I know, isn't that weird? It makes sense when you start thinking about it, but oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's the place where there's the lowest pressure. So all those solids pool in your left big toe.
Okay.
And 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 so the condition of gout is is having too much uric acid solids in your blood. But a gout attack is what they call them, an outbreak, is when your toe feels like you've smashed it with a hammer, and it just won't stop. So it started for me on Friday, and like I'm limping like I've got a broken leg, and it's just miserable. It's
Oh.
absolutely miserable. So there's a
What do you do
uh,
to alleviate it? And like your how what kind of treatment is there?
well, there is. You could go. You could. I can't remember if it's pills or a shot. Might have been a shot. But there is a treatment for it. But but I'm having problems with the VA and healthcare.
What's going
Um,
on?
say again.
What's going on with it?
Well, so like I have a community care authorization. So my primary care physician is a local doctor in a local hospital. She's great. I've been seeing her for 2 years, but her office forgot to put in a request to renew the authorization. So every year they have to request to renew it.
Yep.
And if you don't renew it, then I got to go through the whole process of getting community care authorized again. So now I don't have a community care physician here in Boulder, and I don't have a community care, or I don't have a primary care physician in the VA.
Well, it's
So
a
I've got to
really
get,
good thing that Elon did everything to make things more efficient, so that way you can, not have this happen in the future.
yeah, there, I could go on about the VA, and I can't remember. I think his name's Doug Collins, is the new secretary. Um, and he was a congressman before, and there's there are two people who just organizationally are way out of their league in the administration. One is Pete Hegseth, and two is Doug Collins.
I'm definitely
And
glad you said Pete was number one.
yeah, there's well, I think Pete, there's I at first was not happy about that. I thought because I mean he was he got promoted to captain just before he got out, so he's got and he is a combat veteran, so he did deploy. He's got that level of understanding, but the Pentagon is a huge organ. I mean, people don't realize how large the Pentagon is. It is the
Pentagon
largest.
City. It's a city.
Yeah, it's just absolutely massive. And it's managing more people than he's ever thought of managing before. Because he went from being a newly promoted captain, he'd been a platoon leader, so he had managed uh a total of maybe 50 folks on his platoon, including attachments. Um, and and then he was a personality on Fox News who didn't manage anybody except for probably a personal assistant or two.
Hmm.
So I was really, really worried about him, and that was true. So both him and Collins resorted to the same thing. They just let Doge do whatever they want. So if you look at like Rubio, um, Rubio took charge of state. He's like, no, you're not going to tell me who's getting laid off and who's not getting laid off. I'm going to figure that out on my own.
Yeah.
So so Rubio's doing the
Because
exact
he's
same
had
thing.
the experience to be able to go into that position. That's why it was both sides of the aisle that confirmed him. It was not a question for Rubio.
Yeah, yeah. So Rubio is really doing a great job at state. It's a big job, but he's filling in. He's filling those shoes well. There's but so Musk didn't really have that much influence on state. Um, the USAID thing, but anyway, but uh, but it was huge in the VA, and that's why all these people got fired like right away, and then they're having to hire them right back, and then they're getting fired again, and that kind of stuff destroys the morale of an organization. Um, but anyway, I'm getting so far off my plate. I'm
So Gal, what was the second part of your week?
so, and this is horrible, but I gotta say it. So in my neighborhood, one of the routes that I walk pretty frequently, um, there, well, we've been getting, just scuttlebutt rumors in the neighborhood about a mountain lion that's been hanging out in this area.
I
So
saw that picture you posted.
yeah. So, and that was the actual cat that did this. So, there's up on, Balsam, I think it's Balsam, um, the beautiful, beautiful street, really, really large, gorgeous, gorgeous homes. Um, and this couple, had a little white dog, like a little 15, 20 pound poodle like dog, fluffy hair. And they just got that dog a year ago because their previous dog died and they got really, really depressed. So they're like, well, we got to adopt another dog. So a year ago, they adopted this dog. Well, they go out for an evening walk. So it's, an older gentleman and his wife and their dog, and they go for a walk, and then just out of nowhere, just boom, all of a sudden, this mountain lion runs out, snatches their dog, shakes it, and runs off, takes off with their dog and the leash dragging behind, right?
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, they had no idea what to do. So they go back to their home. They're kind of in shock. They call the animal control folks who come, but by then it's dark, they're like, well, we don't know what we're going to do. So they ended up coming
Yeah.
out the next day and they found that dog. Cause I guess mountain lions will, I mean, they kill if there's just an opportunity to kill.
Yeah, and then
And it
they'll
doesn't
store the
matter if
food and
they're
come back
hungry.
to it later.
Yeah. So they'll kill it, they'll take it, they'll cache it, and then they'll come back later when they're hungry to eat it. But they won't pass an easy kill. And that's what there's, but the problem is that there's the dog was on a leash, so it was attached to a human being. So that to me, that is a really, really big leap in terms of uh, the cat's lack of fear for humans.
Yep, because
That's
that's the problem that you see a lot in Montana with bears getting into people's properties is they have to euthanize these bears because, well, now they're not scared of people.
yeah. I lived in Butte, Montana for a while when I was young, and there's a yeah there's every year we had bears in Butte. They were all over town. There's people would put bungee cords or rocks or anything they could to try and keep their trash cans full.
Yeah,
But
it is a, it's one of the things that when you're out in the foothills in Boise, you're aware, okay, there's coyotes. Depending on how far out you go, there may be mountain lions. I last year had oh, what are you drinking?
it's a
Is it
Vita
another seasonal
Chiara.
flavor?
It's an Italian lager. No, it's an Italian style pale.
I have something different today. I have Klaus. So it's a German non-alcoholic, which is crisp and fresh.
There's a and just so you know, because they usually stock these in the package stores, but the uh, the athletic folks sent me an email and said that the specialty beer that's the every month I get a new beer, whatever. There's a new beer, and I have no idea what it's going to be. I just order 2 6 packs of whatever is the
The
specialty
seasonal
beer for that
rotation,
month.
yeah.
So they send me an email every month telling me what it is, and for August it's Oktoberfest. So the Oktoberfest is back, and there's
I've
a
had their Oktoberfest. It's really good.
it is really good. Last year, I went down to the liquor store and I bought like a case every day for 3 days. I had all this Oktoberfest in my closet because it's just so delicious.
They did a crossover promotion when Netflix made the Witcher series,
Uh-huh.
and it was so good. And there was one place in town, and I bought them out of every single case that they had because I was like, I'm not gonna ever get this again. I'll just have these in my fridge. They will get drank. Um, but circling back to the mountain lions and things like that, there was a couple years, 2 years ago, I was going out to Cascade to do morel hunting. And I mean, I live in Idaho. I'm aware I've gone out camping. I don't go camping without a firearm because there's things that go bump in the night. So I had a buddy tell me, "Hey, here's a really good spot for morels. You should go out and you should do some hunting. You've never had a chance to do it before." So I'm getting an expectation of, okay, I'm going to be doing a lot of rolling around in low ground. There's going to be a bit of work. If I have something on my side, that's probably going to get really cumbersome and in the way. And for whatever reason, the only time that I've ever made this decision, I was like, I don't need to take my firearm out into the woods. That's I've been safe every single time up to this point. So I drive a couple hours, get to Cascade, drive an hour up into the mountains, find this little spot, and I'm morel hunting. And I find morels. I find them everywhere. And I am just like, ooh, ooh, mushroom, ooh, little mushroom, ooh, little mushroom, ooh, little mushroom. And I fill up this entire bin with like 15 pounds of mushrooms. So then go back down to my car, grab my next bin, and I'm just like, I'm so excited. So I go higher up in elevation and I am down on the ground 10 feet away from this giant bush. And this bush just goes, "Ah," and starts shaking around. And I realize, like, oh, you were letting me know that you're there, and I have nothing to defend myself. Your space, you can have it. You can have all these mushrooms. I will piss right off. So it's interesting for me because when I think of, if you're going out on walks and things like that, being able to defend yourself is a normal thing. And Colorado is no different. There's plenty of wilderness. But the sad thing is when people start encroaching and building into wilderness, what does the wild do? Where do the wild things roam? I mean, eventually they're just going to get closer and closer to people, and it's going to become the issue of, okay, which one of you wins this fight, and how do we prevent disaster from happening?
Yeah, yes, and that's what happened here. I mean, when I was reading the article in the paper, I just felt so bad for those people because I mean, I go out with Buddy all the time, at in that same hour, evening hour, because it's the sun finally went down. I don't have to put on a long sleeve shirt. I don't have to wear a hat. Um, there's and uh and I haven't walked that route in a long time. Uh and I'm kind of glad because there's a few routes that I hadn't walked in a while, so I'm like, oh, I'm going to walk this route. Oh, I'm going to walk this route. And I and Buddy keeps saying every time we go past a road where if you turn uphill, uh, you go to where this neighborhood is. And every time I've been like, no, I don't want to go up there today. I don't want to go up there today. I don't know why, but I've been saying no. But now I know, maybe it was just serendipity that that we didn't because um
I'm definitely glad that didn't happen to you. It's really unfortunate that happened to that family, and knowing how that community is with being able to protect yourselves, it's going to be really interesting to see what the city does to respond.
yeah, there's and I wasn't encouraged by what they said they were going to do. They're like, well, we don't want to get rid of this cat because if we get rid of this cat, then another cat's just going to come in its place.
Not true.
There's
Not.
I
I
mean
mean, maybe true,
that may be true because they are territorial,
but this
but they're
one is
solitary. So
emboldened.
what happens is they establish a territory and they mark the territory. So another cat comes by and notices the marking and it won't go in there. But if they quit marking the territory, another cat will go in and take over that territory. So
I
that part of it is true. But the part that I'm like, this cat came up to a dog that was attached to two human beings, and
hmm
like there's I I mean if I were the the warden or whoever's in charge of the that we've got a fish and game thing for the city to police department. They've got their own department of wildlife. I would take that cat out. I'd be like, no, sorry.
Yeah,
The,
honestly, like, it's not a quick solution, but if it were me, tag that cat, figure out where its territory is, get rid of that cat, and then be able to find ways of marking that territory as part of your routine, so that way new cats don't enter into that space. Uh, Now, the cost involved, this is why I'm not in the municipalities of city government. That is way too much headache and too much voting and too much public opinion for me. But like the very clear solution in this one is that cat needs to go.
yeah, that's my thing is the cat needs to go, and I didn't get any sense from the news article that the city was going to take any action towards the cat at all. And they
And
basically
for
said,
full disclosure, we're both dog people. I will take a dog over any cat 100% of the time.
yeah, there's
It could
there's
be a shitty dog and a great cat, and I will still take the dog.
but you saw that picture. That's a big
That's a
mountain
big
lion.
cat.
And
Yeah,
I mean that it's literally in somebody's backyard, walking past their pool. So it's not just taking your dog out for a walk. If you let your dog out to go take a leak or whatever in the middle of the night, um, or in the evening time, even if you let your dog out, there's a chance that a cat's
there's a
going to come
risk.
along and snatch it.
There's an account that I follow that Haley absolutely hates. It's called Nature's Metal.
Yeah, I
I
follow
love
them.
it. I love Nature's Metal. And for me, I'm not like taking delight in sad things. For me, it is genuinely my constant reminder of the pecking order. That's, I like having stuff like that in my feed to remind myself how good I have it. And there was this thing that I saw the other day, and it was a bunch of people in the middle of the forest, and they were looking at chimpanzees, and this one chimpanzee just grabbed a monkey and went to town, and I was like, oh my goodness, that is like, okay, I'm not taking those tours. I don't want to be anywhere near that kind of wild. But there are constant ring camera footage of mountain lions that go into people's backyards. And there's constant videos of people in California, especially, that are just in their living room, like, there's this giant cat at the back glass window and I don't know what to do.
I there's and I don't know what channel it is, but Instagram has been showing me all these animals on trampolines. So like there's I think I liked
Funny.
that. So I saw a video of rabbits, like a bunch of rabbits hopping up and down on a trampoline. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna follow this channel. And so then, there's a bear that gets there and he starts bouncing up and down, and like on the fourth bounce, he just falls right through it. And then there's a deer. So there's a deer, there's a buck walking around with a doe, right? And the buck jumps up on the trampoline, jumps about 4 or 5 times, really impressive. And then he jumps off and like, clump, just falls flat on his face. So
This is
anyway, yeah,
uh this is where I have to have the sad conversation of, Dad, those are AI videos.
it could be. They make me laugh and they don't look AI.
Oh,
There's,
it's amazing where parts come. There's a video right now that has, in 48 hours, 500 million views. Because it's a guy who's hugging a dog that's like this tall around him, and he's just smiling because he has this horse of a dog, and it looks as real as anything I've ever seen. Fake as the day is long. And we're at that point where AI videos are passing as good enough that it's fooling even people who recognize the telltale signs.
yeah, Sam Altman just gave a warning
I
that
watched that episode, yeah.
about the financial fraud.
Not the financial fraud, just the fact that so many people are putting their personal information into LLMs, not realizing that there is no HIPAA, there is no client
Yeah,
patient confidentiality.
yeah. There's this was a separate video that there's because and the most notable event of this kind is Marco Rubio. Um, Somebody was calling people up claiming to be Marco Rubio,
Mhm.
and sounded just exactly like him. And so Altman's like, hey, this fraud is on its way, and you need to figure out what to do, because there's a lot of banks that like their fraud prevention people will call you on your number and say, hey, did you just charge this or whatever? So now there's AI that can respond just like you. And people are making it for people are there's a market for it, because I mean, this seems kind of innocuous, but there's people will have an AI join a Zoom call for them. So they'll just have an AI image of themselves live, on join the Zoom call, and if anybody asks them a question, it'll respond to the question using the AI, but in your voice. So yeah, there's it's crazy. I just night before last, I watched 2001 Space Odyssey, a Space Odyssey again, for uh, well, I'll get to it when I'm on what do you bring to the table. But so I was like reminiscing because that movie was written in 1968 or was released in 1968.
So when
So
you
that
texted me that you were watching it, I that's one of the movies that's in my collection that I've actually never watched. I
oh
have a bunch of movies that I buy used Blu-rays all the time at half price books, and if it's something that looks interesting, I don't know when I'm gonna have the time to watch it, but it's $5. I'll put it in my collection, and then when I have the time and I'm in the mood, I have it available to me. So it's the same thing that I do with my comic books is if I ever have the time, I want to be able to pull from stuff that I know that I enjoy. So I always buy stuff really cheap and used. And 2001 is a movie that I've been meaning to watch for a long time because of how impactful it is to technology nowadays.
yeah, and it's really fascinating to watch. Uh, how accurately they portray um uh the 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 potentiality. Now they thought we were going to be a lot farther along in space travel in 2001. But that's one of the things that's interesting because in 1968, I mean that's when all the Apollo things and like space travel was we even called it the space age.
Yeah, and we were going to be able to have nuclear power to power our home devices. It was going to be the future world.
And then the 1970s happened, and and we just were like, we don't need to go to space anymore.
Yeah,
We
acid's a hell of a drug.
yeah, there's so, and then we just stopped. There's so the premise of 2001: A Space Odyssey is that we were going to continue trying to explore space, that we were going to continue trying to establish, that like we were going to go back to the moon and
Yeah.
establish a colony, and then those colonies would eventually be, you know, permanently manned cities or outposts or whatever.
There's a
Um,
really interesting show on Apple TV, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it's called For All Mankind. Um,
I think I've seen an episode or two.
it is one of my favorite shows that they have put out because it's historical revisionism of what if this alternate history had gone through. And the idea is we've got the space race, it's us versus the Russians, but the Russians beat us. And because the Russians beat us, well, fuck you. You might be first, but we're still best. You put one person up there, we're going to put a couple people up there. And then it actually makes American exceptionalism be what drives the race as opposed to being first. Because when we were first, yeah, we did. There's nothing to do here. Let's go. We showed the Russians. But if the Russians are there and we want to be better, then what kind of tit for tat does that do? So the seasons focus on a specific decade around various space agencies. So the first season, you've got the alternate of what happened. And then the second season is the 80s. Third season is the 90s. Fourth season is the 2000s, but you see the progress of, okay, well, if we would have stayed on the moon, we would have found ice deposits. If we would have found ice deposits, we would have found a reason to stay on the moon. If we would have found a reason to stay on the moon, we probably would have progressed our nuclear program a little bit different. If we had progressed our nuclear program different, man, propulsion is going to look a whole lot different. What would the shuttle program in the 90s look like if we had progressed our nuclear power so now we can actually have bases on the moon and then try and send things to the asteroid belt? And then by the time that you get to the third season, it's like, okay, it's the 2000s, but now they're actually out to Mars because this progress is just a natural, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? How does that tit for tat continue the ball moving forward? And there's all sorts of really interesting analogs to how history played out versus how history could have played out. The analogs of eventually there is going to be the privatization of space. What would that look like if it wasn't a character like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos doing it, and it was somebody that came in maybe a couple decades sooner that had kind of the stock market vibe to them as opposed to the tech world vibe? It's a really, really fascinating show, and I'm anxiously waiting for them to ever make another season. Apple.
Yeah, there's that's kind of well, it makes me think of now China because it's uh there's yeah, I mean I'm almost resigned to what I believe to be a fact that China is going to emerge from this century as the leading power in the world. We're
Oh
going to
man,
lose
I
our
just saw a video of an AI tractor that they just developed that's a completely autonomous farming tractor. The thing is cool, and it's the fix of not having workers in a field. And it is amazingly efficient, and it will do so much good for rural Chinese people a generation from now.
yeah, and if they can figure out because farming just takes up so much resources because you've got there's people that are out there. You've got to,
Mhm.
and it's the same for us. I mean, we've got people in Iowa. I remember, driving through Iowa, and you look around, you're like, man, why do these people pick the president? There's because there's like, there's I mean there's like an exit on the interstate, and there's like nothing there. It's just
Yep.
an exit to a road. There's no there. You're like, well, what the hell's out there?
Well, you got to drive it to find out.
Yeah, and they're so but that's so it's so difficult to uh to provide infrastructure to and to provide to get power out there to there. So anyway, it's just really expensive. So if China could urbanize, which that's their objective, they want to urbanize as much of their uh population as they can because they can distribute things to their population and control their population a lot more effectively if they're consolidated.
Yeah. I think it'll make some of the progress that they've been making with vertical farming, I think is really interesting. And that is genuinely one of the moves that I want to see more happening in the United States is like vertical farming of hydroponics and aquaponics. I think that that's a much more sustainable way of having crops go year round. And what's interesting is we're talking about space. That's one of the biggest studies that happens in the space station is how can you have sustainable growth of food in environments that don't actually support that life from existing in the first place? And vertical farming here on Earth is probably some of the most practical application of the research that's being done in space because it's way more habitable here than in the low Earth atmosphere.
Yeah, there's a there's a that's a big theme in 2001: A Space Odyssey is food. So there's like
Yeah.
several scenes where they're eating space food, and it's interesting because they were like, "Oh, okay, well, I wonder what food's going to be like." So they were, but we never finished developing it because we just quit going to space. But it's funny that that there's only one scene, but the most complex thing is they it's there was a sign that says zero gravity toilet, read instructions before using, and this doctor who's the head of the whole project that the movie's about is like studying the instructions on how to use the bathroom. But
Vacuums.
anyway, so we've gotten way far off of what's on my plate. What's on your plate? What's been going on with you?
This week has been a pretty big plate. This was my birthday yesterday.
Yep.
Um,
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I had I took yesterday and today. Wait, what's today? Today's Wednesday. I took Monday and Tuesday off. I have not had any time off for all year because one of the fortunate things of being a business owner when you don't get PTO provided to you by the wonderful corporations of America is that anytime you take a day off, it costs you money. And that's not even the money that it is that you're spending on the vacation that you want to take. So taking 2 days off is incredibly expensive. And after having the barbers quit at the beginning of this year, it's like, okay, well, I can't really take any time off. I got to be working. So I gave myself a birthday present of 2 days off. Um, and we went to there's a place in Hagerman, Idaho, that is called Banbury Hot Springs. And Banbury Hot Springs and Miracle Hot Springs are awesome. They're fantastic. And Banbury Hot Springs has this place called Banbury Adventures, and you can load in there and get on a paddleboard and then just paddle downstream for about a mile, mile and a half. And there's this little island that's on the offshoot of the river. And behind this island is a natural spring, but it's not a hot spring. So because it doesn't have the regular flow of the river and it's just off the chute, you have these gorgeous, crystal clear blue waters, and it is freezing cold, but it is stunning and it's beautiful. So it's one of those places that people have been telling me about for years, and it's just one of those bucket list places like, ah, yeah, I gotta go and check that out at some point. But because of how much population growth Idaho has had in the last few years, any of these little fun, once hidden treasures are now Disneyland. So there was this hot spring, if you're going north, called Kirkham Hot Springs, and is probably my favorite hot springs in the world 10 years ago. But now, good luck getting out there and finding a vacant pool because everybody goes there because it's such easy access. And that's kind of the same thing with Banbury. So Banbury is really, really easy access to these wonderful hot springs. And because it's wonderful access to this Blue Heart Spring, if you go on the weekends, it's Disneyland, and you don't necessarily get to have relaxation in the water. So we went out on Monday and spent probably about 4 hours out on the river. Saw pelicans. Saw a whole bunch of fish jumping out of the river. So beautiful, beautiful day. And then um, Uncle Chris, your brother, is driving from California to Utah because cousin Katie's getting married. And he wanted to stop through Boise to see family, so I got to see them Monday night. Him and Aunt Stacy hung out with them for the evening, and then yesterday, basically they just hung
Was that
out
your
for the
first time
evening, had
meeting
some steaks
Stacy?
over. So what was that?
Was that your first time meeting Stacy?
No, because you guys sent us out to help out with Stacy when she was pregnant with the triplets.
Yeah, that's what I thought. There's a,
Yeah,
I
but it
think.
was Haley's first time meeting Stacy.
Oh, okay,
Um,
okay, okay.
Yeah, so that was awesome. Like Haley got to meet family. Uncle Chris and I got caught up. Just basically talked about how the girls were doing, how cousin Sam's been doing. And it's just great because not seeing family for over 10 years and then being able to just get caught up and realize like, yeah, oh, Bentley men. I'm fully aware there is a cycle of Bentley men and there is a consistency of Bentley men, and we can see where we all come from. But I remember when we were living in Hawaii and you sent Brad and I to help out when Aunt Stacy was pregnant with the triplets, and we stayed with them in California for about a month. The the hilarious lessons of how to swear properly as taught to you by a Californian driver. He is the same man, and I love it.
There's you were talking about Hagerman, and I'm pretty sure uh that that's where there's a trout farm.
Yeah,
Um
that's the Hagerman Trout Hatchery. It's funny because so where you load in at Banbury, and where the Blue Heart Springs is, that hatchery is halfway point. So as we're passing, we're seeing all of the water outlet, and Haley's just like, so is this just where they dump the fish into the river?
No, that particular hatchery is a commercial hatchery, so it's not a government hatchery. And those trout, that's what if you get trout in a restaurant in the Western United States, it's
Those are
probably coming
delicious
from that
trout.
farm. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's and here's a funny thing because you were talking about the difficulties of being a small business owner. There's a you might appreciate this. So the way that um they uh they cultivate those trout is they basically just divert some water off of the river, um and it flows through these uh pens where they keep trout. So all the trout in one pen are the same age. So they're all the same size. And the water goes all the way through, and then they just dump it back into the river. So they just basically borrow water for a little while and use that water that they borrow to cultivate the trout. That,
But one of the interesting things about the way that they do this and why the Hagerman trout are so good is if you go fishing in a river, trout's kind of a dirty fish because it's dirty river water.
yep,
But the way that they cycle this water, it's incredibly clean. So when you have Hagerman trout, it tastes different. It is a
yeah,
very, very clean tasting fish. It's super good.
brilliant. And he doesn't. They don't have to pay for the water rights because they're not using the water.
Nope.
It's a zero sum game. I mean, they just the water flows through those pens the same way that it would flow through the river, and it doesn't. So it's not like there's a lot of pollution getting into the water or anything like that. No more pollution than if the trout were in the river. So it's very, very.
Exactly.
But so here's the thing, though. The only problem that they were having is that so they would harvest trout, and then you end up with all these fish guts, right? Fish heads and fish guts, and he would have to pay to take off all the fish guts because it was hazardous waste, right? So what he did is he also has a hot springs on his property, and he bought a bunch of alligators,
Yep.
and he
Which
put
are also farmed.
yeah, so he's got these alligators that he feeds fish guts to. So he doesn't have to pay to get rid of the fish guts anymore. He just takes the fish guts that he used to have to pay to truck off. He feeds them to the alligators, and then when the alligators get the right size, he harvests them and sells them too. So it's the same thing. If you're getting specialty alligator meat in some restaurant or whatever, it's probably coming from Hagerman, Idaho.
So it's fun because anytime that we're in Hagerman, there's a restaurant, the Snake River Grill, that's right on the river, and we almost always eat there. It's like snapshot of a family diner from the 80s and 90s, and it has not changed in years. It's really good small town diner food, but I call it the place that you can go to eat dinosaurs. Because on the sign they advertise that they have sturgeon and alligator. And it's also one of the only places that I know within a couple of hours that you can get frog's legs, and I love frog's legs. But they've got little gator nuggets that are just deep fried, and they've got sturgeon, which is not my thing. But it's a really, really good little diner restaurant. It's funny because so we went with a couple of friends, and Hagerman and Buell, that whole area, it it is small town Idaho.
Yeah, yeah, it really
Uh,
is.
and there is a coffee shop called Bullets and Brew. And I get a kick out of this every single time. Just like, oh yeah, because I need to get a cup of coffee when I go get my gun. That's right. Uh, and as we're driving into town, there's the church that's right on the
I saw you
main
posting those
corner.
pictures.
Oh my God. So it's a church that has this sign that says tolerance is not a Christian value. Haley and I are passing this like, I am. Okay, we can have a discussion about this. There's the intolerance dilemma. Are you tolerant of things that you're not tolerant of? Like I personally hate Nazis, but I tolerate the fact that they exist. Okay, let's just really understand that. Man, that church needs a better marketing team.
There's yeah, and there's I mean, there's a church here in town that that is always saying the same that exact same thing that that empathy is not a virtue and tolerance is not a virtue, and they just they end up preaching this really angry,
Hateful rhetoric.
divisive. Yeah, it's just a man. I'm like, there's so I was watching this video that the pastor of this church put out, and I was like, man, what an angry, bitter person. You know, there's I don't understand. Well, I do understand it. There's but
Man, for
it's
pastor, you need Jesus.
yeah, there yeah. I'm like and then like halfway through this thing, he's like, yeah, and my specialty is spiritual formation. I'm like, really? there's there's you there's so and but the sad thing is there's all kinds of people now that they're like, if you're really radical and you're really divisive and you're really you know uh edgy and then people are like, oh yeah, that's especially men, they're like, oh, that's what true masculinity is. um and it's yeah, it's just really unfortunate.
Yeah. I this is a really good segue of what I'm bringing to the table later, but it is your turn. So, what are you bringing to the table today?
Yeah, so this is I'm gonna take a brief break from my rant uh, on manufacturing and the growing dominance of China that we need to consider. But so I'm going to talk about the Vatican and AI. There's
Okay.
because see, there's a lot of things about the Catholic Church that you just don't really know until you start looking at it. So like um the Vatican is the only religion in the world that has a permanent embassy to the United Nations. They've got a Secretary of State. They've got an embassy to the United States. They've got an embassy to Britain. They've got an embassy to France. They're widely recognized, and it's the Vatican is like this little 1.6 square mile city, and like nobody is a native Vaticanian. There's not even a word for somebody that's from the Vatican, because the only people who live in in Vatican City are there because they work there. They come from someplace else. So they're like a cardinal from Argentina or a cardinal from someplace, or a priest from someplace in Italy,
So
and they
it's a
go.
perfect society of 100% immigrants. Huh.
Yeah. There's, but they're recognized as a nation, and because they're a nation, they have embassies. So so and all that to say is it's just really interesting to be part of uh, a church that has that kind of global reach, that kind of um, ability to negotiate. And like their membership in the UN they're a non-voting member, so they don't vote on any resolutions, but they don't want to vote. I mean, they just want to be able to, whatever the UN is talking about, they want to bring a moral voice. So that's what's interesting about the Vatican and the AI, is you might think that, like, it's a bunch of these old guys, and they're still trying to figure out how to use a computer, so they don't really know about technology. But that is far from the truth. The Vatican has been dealing with AI, directly dealing with AIs, since Paul the 6th wrote a an encyclical. That whenever the Pope writes something and publishes it, it's called an encyclical. So he wrote an encyclical called Humanae Vitae. In 57 years ago, he wrote this, and it's called On Human Life. And it's interesting because human dignity is the centerpiece of the Vatican's approach to AI. And just this last January, so this was under Francis. So Pope Francis um, released another encyclical, this document called the Antiqua et Nova, which means ancient and new. And this ancient and new is a very detailed document on ethics and artificial intelligence. So
Okay.
so in light of the conversation that you and I were talking about earlier with Sam Altman, and the three fears that he has regarding artificial intelligence, and his recent discussion about uh, artificial intelligence and fraud. People using it to and fraud financial institutions and steal tons of money because
And just be
they
deceptive in
can
general.
yeah. So anyway, there's the Vatican's been involved in AI for a long time. So their core position. And so I just figured so it's like, hey, I'm having to think about this, myself, because it's like I'm using AI, and I'm trying to understand how AI affects human development, because that's my academic interest is human development and identity development. And that's a real issue with AI. So the Vatican's core position is that AI is a remarkable human achievement, but it's exactly that, a human achievement. And um, there's the church makes this crucial distinction that AI is a product of human intelligence. So there's human intelligence is so much more than just processing information or solving problems. So AI does really good at processing information, solving problems, and um, and when I say processing information, language is information. So it
Yep.
can read and listen to conversations, and then figure out ways to speak and have conversations using the data that it's reading. But human intelligence is also embodied. I mean, we have an intelligence, an intelligence that is informed by the fact that we are a creature. We could die. We know we're going to die. So, like an artificial intelligence doesn't know that it's going to die. It has
It doesn't
no,
understand time because it's just waiting for responses.
yeah. And like human intelligence is inherently relational, and and uh and and the computer's understanding of relation is data relative to data. So the connection between data, this data connects to this piece of data, which connects to this piece of data. So that's the relativity of 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 artificial intelligence. But the relation of human intelligence is what we just finished talking about. You met with my brother, and your family interacted with his family, and you've got all these memories of when your cousins were young and you went and helped out. And so you've got this that's relational knowledge, that's intelligence. So how to react to your Uncle Chris based upon how you've interacted with him in the past. And it's not only informed by your mind, it's formed by your emotion and by your desire, the desire to know more about your family and your past, and um and uh your there's so like and humans, this is interesting. There, I mean, because there's so much uh humans are inherently drawn towards love. Um, and that drawing towards love is it's a spiritual aspect of who humans are, but you see it in every aspect of our society. So like our music is, I mean, you listen to punk rock songs and they're love songs. There's you listen to country western songs, they're love songs. You listen to rock and roll anthems, they're love songs. There's all this
Except War
all
Pigs.
yeah, there's but there's so we have this 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 innate part of human thought and human, so uh humans have a cognitive intelligence. We've got an affective intelligence, so which is emotional, and then we've got this cognitive intelligence that is the intelligence of our will. It's the intelligence of our deepest desires, and there's how does I don't. That's to me that's a very very separate thing from from AI. I mean, there's it's like I'll go back to this love thing. Um, love. Uh, when you fall head over heels in love, or you're having young love, and it's really more of an affective kind of love. It's an emotional kind of love. But when you fall in love with somebody and that love is going to last beyond an emotion, it's going to last 10 years. It's going to last 15 years. It's going to last for the rest of your life, hopefully, there's, that kind of love comes from our cognitive ability. It comes from deeper within us, from a where emotions don't affect it. Like you could be completely angry and yelling and saying horrible things to a person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, and that's not a contradiction. So when you log in, or you begin a conversation with a chatbot, that chatbot's not like, man, I hope we have these conversations for
Yep.
all of the rest of your life, because they don't even know they're going to die.
It
There's
doesn't give a
no,
shit.
yeah,
And it's interesting because you can be talking about the exact same thing with two different people, but have to have completely different interactions with it. Haley earlier was talking about there is an issue in my life currently that is a hot button topic. And if mom talks to me about it, I will not open up because I know what it's going to do. And if Haley asks me about it, I will be really, really, really transparent about how angry it makes me. And we were having this conversation of it has nothing to do with the topic makes me angry. It's that I'm angry. And I you're gonna be in my life for the rest of my life. I'm not trying to hide that part of me from you. I want you to understand where my headspace is at. I love you and I need you to know where I'm at. I also love mom, but I also know that there needs to be a different way of communicating these things because it's going to impact differently because there is a closeness and proximity, and then there's enough of a distance that there is a um okay, well, is this actually how it is? Is there enough being communicated, or am all I seeing is anger? But then there's a gap between the experience of seeing it and then the next experience that we have. So you have all of that lingering, okay, well, I wonder about this and I wonder, and that's how people get anxiety. But it's still, you have to be able to know, okay, where am I going to have this conversation with the specific human that I'm having? There was a book I just finished reading, Project Hail Mary, and there's this really interesting part in the book where they're talking about language processing, your cognition, and one character is telling to the other character, I just don't think the way that you think. He's like, no, we think the exact same way. And he says, but you remember things so well. And he's like, yeah, but memory has nothing to do with thinking. Memory is storage. Thinking is real time. He's like, yeah, but you know how you know all these math equations. He's like, yeah, but those are formulas. That's not thinking. That's doing equations, and those are always universal. So what you're talking about is universal and storage, but thinking is thinking, and that's what makes you a person, is your ability to actually think.
Yeah, I used to talk to my boss because he'd come by and I'd just be sitting at my desk, and it would look like I'm not doing anything. It would completely look like I'm not doing anything because I'm just sitting at my desk. And he'd be like, "What's up, man?" I'm like, "I'm thinking." And they're, "Well, what are you thinking about?" And then I tell him what I was thinking about, and so on and so forth. But it's like there's this there we've gotten so into productivity that we think we have to be producing something all the time, and there's this inner self that we have where this, I was talking about these three aspects, these three domains of of the human psyche: our cognition, our thoughts, our affection, our feelings, and our conation, which is our desires. And and you have to have time and space to just consider those. And it's like, oh, okay, well, how does how I'm feeling right now relate to my desires for the rest of my life? How does it relate to my desires for the impact I want to leave in the world, for the accomplishments that I want to make in my role in this job, or whatever? Those are all, um, there. And if you only think, if you're like, oh, I go to work, and when I go to work, I'm gonna use my brain. I'm just gonna think. That's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna think. I'm gonna think. I'm gonna think. But when you go to work, you have to think, and you have to feel, and you have to, it's like, well, when you're doing your strategic planning, you've got to stop and you've got to be like, okay, get away from your thoughts, get away from your feelings, and think about your long-term desires for the company, for the corporation, for the organization, whatever it is. And that is human intelligence. And I think that, to get back to the whole Catholic aspect of this, the Catholic position is the AI is a really useful tool for humans to use during that process. To be like, oh, okay, now I'm going to think about and you and I have talked about it, several times. But AI can help inform your decisions. But if you don't take the time to understand your own deep-seated desires, your own affection, and your own thoughts about something, then then we misappropriate the artificial intelligence and utilize the artificial intelligence instead of our human intelligence.
Yep.
And that's the danger. That's
So, not to cut you off, I was having this conversation this morning. So, the guy who made our fantastic intro and outro music, I had a meeting with him this morning, and I'm helping him because he's a full time musician. He doesn't understand AI. He has not adopted it because he hasn't had enough time. And I helped build his website, and I'm helping him now understand how to use AI to be able to manage his website and kind of give him some of those key understandings that I've learned. And we get to this point where I'm saying, okay, I'm going to teach you a lesson on how to create a color palette and a color scheme. And here's all the information that has been fed. Da, 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 da. So it gets to a point where the AI does the laziest thing in the world. And he's asking for a new color palette, and it gives the exact same color palette that exists on the website. And he looks at me and he's like, "So did it do it right?" I was like, "I mean, if you think it's lazy, call it out on being lazy." The reality is you're the human in charge here. So if you allow lazy work to come out of a lazy robot, that's your fault. And I started talking to him about this thing that I had posted in my stories the other day. And I have so many friends who, since ChatGPT has exploded, have become life coaches. I have no problem with life coaching. I have a whole stack of coaching books myself. I have, and this is coming from a world of corporate leadership. So like I have a lot of value towards coaching. Um, however, if you never really were an inspirational person to begin with, and then all of a sudden you're spouting out these crazy long paragraphs of inspirational messaging. And as somebody who uses AI regularly is like, wow, you put all of 10 seconds of effort into this, and it's so blatantly obvious. You have made yourself less inspirational than how you're selling yourself out to be, and you would have just been better off not doing any of it to begin with, because now you're selling yourself as a robot. Um, and and what people are striving for and longing for is human connection as robots take over.
Yeah, and there's and that so that so that ends up being the important role that and I didn't realize this until I started looking at that the church has been playing. So like the Catholic Church back in 2020 issued what they called the Rome Call for AI Ethics. And what it is there's all these major corporations, Microsoft, IBM, Qualcomm, Cisco, and uh, all these governments from around uh, the world who come together and talk about AI ethics and how to guide the technology and how to um, and so I started thinking about like if you I'll just use three AIs as kind of an example. So Sam Altman with OpenAI. When you hear Altman talk, he thinks deeply about the ethical considerations of AI.
Yes, he does.
So he's answering the Rome call because
Yeah.
that's the thing. There's no single organization around the world. No, the United States wants to beat China in the AI race, and that's what governments want to do, and um, and AI companies want to beat the other AI to be the first to AGI or to be the first to this or to be the first to that.
And
Everybody's
to
trying.
Sam's credit, his stance on the ethics of AI is one of the reasons why I'm so adamant about using ChatGPT over the other models. I think there's models that'll probably do what I use AI for better, but I like the ethics of that company. And I'm if I'm going to put money towards something, I'm going to put money towards that guy and his vision as opposed to Elon Musk and his vision.
Yeah, so I would say that Perplexity and their leadership is is
They're trying to just be the bastion of truth, which is interesting.
yeah, and they're they are um competing, but their target is on Google search. Um, but they're but when you listen to their CEO Aravind, I can't remember his last name, but he does the same thing. So he talks a lot about the ethics of AI. So, but and you just mentioned him, Elon Musk and XAI. XAI just, I mean, they name it Grok, and it's like this boorish, behemoth that
Let me
just
give you an anime girl that's going to get you all sorts of riled up.
yeah, and uh, there's it's so funny. He's suing OpenAI because they're trying to change from being an open source company, a nonprofit company, to being a for profit company, basically. And but that has nothing to do with why he's suing them. He knows that they're a threat, and he's you know, and Altman used to be a friend, but he's like, nope, you're not my friend anymore, and I'm gonna. So the ethics that surround Grok AI is very, very different. And that's what, there's so where in the world is there a force that's large enough and broad enough and deep enough to try and negotiate and not necessarily negotiate, but to try and influence all these different nations and all these different companies and help them understand that, again, the most important thing about AI is that artificial intelligence cannot replace human intelligence. And if our marketing strategies are trying to get people to replace their own thoughts with these algorithmic thoughts, then then we're on the wrong side of AI history. There's going to be a good AI history and there's going to be a bad AI history. And the good AI history is going to be the ways that humans use AI to improve the human experience. There's a
I genuinely like everyone I talked to about Rick Rubin in the last couple of weeks, the his whole stance on AI being the most punk rock thing, it just resonates. It resonates so much in me because it is I you have it in you. Everybody has it in them. And even this morning when I was talking to Nick about building the website, I was showing him how to generate some images. And I was telling him, I was like, it was a pretty creative process, isn't it? He's like, well, it's just interesting because it's generating images. I was like, no, it's generating your thoughts. It is you coming out in a way that you don't have a skill set to do, but you know it's in you. And when you see the we did this um little project of me helping him build images that are directed for his website as opposed to doing like a Studio Ghibli filter. So like trying to come up with things from the get go. And I was like, okay, you're gonna give it these kind of prompts. You're gonna get this kind of result. And the very first result that he gets is a piano in an alleyway with a little bit of weeds around. And I mean, you've got it in your mind what you think that that is, and he's got it in his mind what he thinks that it is. And then AI presented it to him. And he has this reaction of, huh, uh, it's it's exactly what I asked for, but it's not what you expected, is it? That's exactly what you need. You know that it's not what you expected. So you have two choices. You can say that that's good enough, and that's good enough, or you can realize that there's more inside you, and maybe you just need to give it a little bit more push and go through that creative process. Bring the thing that is the human part of you, your thoughts and your influence and the things that you want to come out and shape that so that way it is exactly what it is that you want it to be. And that's how you can use AI to be able to bring out the human aspects of yourself.
Yeah, and that's so just to kind of sum up on the whole, Catholic side of this thing. It's when you see the images from the TV on Rome and St. Peter's Square, and there's all these. I mean, there's it's so there has been so far this year uh over 13 million pilgrims to St. Peter's Basilica, and they expect it to be 32 million
Yeah,
for the year.
as somebody who is not a believer and is not an active participant in the faith, I would love to be in St. Peter's Basilica on a Wednesday when the pontiff is speaking. Like, who wouldn't want to experience that?
And what's funny is, it's like you see the College of Cardinals, so you see all these people with, their little red hats and they're wearing uh um um their vestments, and it looks, well, one of those cardinals is dedicated to the digital world. And that's something you don't think about it. That's a really, really fascinating connection between the the like I talked about that encyclical, the antique, the ancient, and the new. And just this last week, part of those pilgrims were they had a jubilee of uh, of uh, of social media influencers within Catholicism. So people who live and work within the digital realm, they took a pilgrimage, and there was thousands of them, and this cardinal who's in charge of doing that led a mass. So all these people who are from all over the world took mass together in St. Peter's Basilica, and then the Pope showed up as a kind of like a surprise after the mass. He shows up and gives a speech, and he starts the speech in Italian, then he speaks in English, then he speaks in Italian again, and he's speaking to all the. And I'm like, there's so um the the influence of the pontiff, the pope, the guy who's the spiritual leader of 1.4 billion Christians all over the world. All over the world. There's not, I mean, there's probably there's, okay, maybe there's not a Catholic church in Antarctica, but there's like
Yet,
pretty much Catholic
yet.
church. Yeah, yeah.
There's enough global warming. There's a yet.
And that's I think that's an important voice to have in the AI discussion. So whether you're Catholic or not, whether you're whether you're religious or not, whether you believe in God or not, there needs to be space in our AI conversation for the wisdom traditions,
Yeah.
for understanding that that you know at its fundamental level, artificial intelligence is a human story. And when we allow ourselves to envision this future where humans are no longer relevant because the computers have taken over, that is just a false picture of what the future is going to be. And that's not saying, oh, well, we shouldn't use AI. We should, be standoffish when it comes to technology. The exact opposite. I mean, it's one of the greatest inventions of humankind to this to today, and it's going to get just nothing but better.
Yep.
But but I think it's important for us to in as we learn how to use AI to realize that, okay, how am I making AI part of my story and not me becoming part of the AI story? There and there's well you kind of anyway, that's what I brought to the plate. What do you bring to the table?
Uh, so I love how all of this is kind of relevant, and I kind of followed suit with you, and I got something prepared. So is it a little sensational? You'll have to forgive me just a smidge. I have a flair for the eccentric, just a smidge today, because I have been largely irritated in the last couple of weeks, and the amount of deception and backpedaling and uh, just blatant disregard for the intelligence of Americans as presented by the Cheeto in chief is driving me crazy. So I am going to give you my very first sermon. So, brothers and sisters, today I am coming to you from the virtual pulpit in the same tradition of the Southern Baptist preachers that I grew up around. I am here to preach fire, brimstone, and the end of days. I am not coming today to speak in any hyperbole or rhetoric, but with deep felt passion of something I hold true with every fiber of my being. Donald J. Trump is the fucking Antichrist. Okay, I said it. There, that was the spectacle. That's the statement. So now we can go into that statement a little bit, because I was raised Southern Baptist, and I am not a part of this anymore. But you are still a part of the world of Christianity. So I do think that this is a good conversation that we can have without it being just rhetoric, because there is a significant amount of non-theistic Americans that statement resonates with. And what is so crazy to me is that the amount of people that have an absolute distaste towards Christianity can kind of recognize that. So how do we have this kind of conversation without it being anything more than just sensationalism? So in an effort to kind of be critical of the people who actually enjoy me making that statement, I would argue you have to read the Bible to actually put any weight into that belief. So, we're going to ask these questions. What is the Antichrist? What does the Bible say about him? How does Donald fit this description? And why does it appear that there are a significant amount of Christians who are unable to recognize the scales over their eyes? So, we're going to start at the end, the book of Revelation. It is the last book of the Bible. It's John the Apostle's retelling of God's revelation to him of end time prophecy. And this book is every metalhead's favorite part of the Bible because there's beasts and dragons and the four horsemen of the apocalypse, but it's also the book that gives a lot of misunderstanding because of how much pop culture references. You've got movies like The Omen that make you think that 666 is going to be branded into the skin, or bands like Iron Maiden that are just like, Beast! Which I'm 100% for. 100% for. Uh, I do have a car with the license plate Satan, so I'm kind of for it.
Yeah,
But
there's that is just such a hilarious license plate. There's the
and I tell you what, when I was in the parking lot of that church in Hagerman, it was hilarious because I park Satan right in front of this sign that says tolerance isn't a Christian virtue, and then I'm taking like 20 feet away to take a picture of it, and the neighbor is just staring at me, just like, what on earth is this guy? Um,
yeah, and
so,
that neighbor might have been the parsonage. That could have been the pastor. You never know.
oh man, that would just make me happy. And if anybody sees that picture on my Instagram, the phone number of the church is not in it. Uh, so there's one thing that we kind of have to start this conversation on for anyone that's not aware that there is a difference. There is the mark of the beast and there is the number of the beast. And they are two very different things. And I think that pop culture has kind of associated them to just be one. And it's very important to recognize that the mark of the beast and the number of the beast are two different things. So if we look in Revelations, uh, chapter 13, verses 16 and 17, he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, so that no one may buy or sell unless he has the mark. And then verse 18 continues, let the one with understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So, if we're looking at verses 16 and 17, there's an implication here that the mark of the beast has significant economic power. And that's really important to note in the 47th administration. The mark is a visible symbol that is a sign of allegiance, identity, and one could argue loyalty to the participation of the systems controlled by the beast. Whereas the number of the beast it's debated by scholars, but in the time that John wrote the book, numbers were oftentimes associated with letters. So many scholars argue that 666 symbolically pointed to Nero in the Hebrew numerals, but there's also a lot of kind of significance in numbers within the Bible. And one of the important numbers to take note of is 7. And 7 is the number of God. It is many times showing up in the Bible. It is 7 days for the world to be created. And it is 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls that represent God's judgment. So the number 7 is largely represented in the Bible as the wholeness, the order, and the sovereignty of God. Now, what is 6? 6 is simply the falling short of God's perfection, and it's associated with mankind because man was created on the 6th day in the Old Testament under Mosaic law. Servitude lasted for 6 years, and then on the 7th year, you were brought into release. So these numbers are kind of important. And when you understand the value of the number of 7 as a holy number, and you recognize in the Christian faith that God is represented as the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, what would the shortcomings of man look like in threefold? What are the shortcomings because of our limitations and our imperfections? And these 3 shortcomings, as depicted by 666, is there's false divinity, which is the beast. There's false prophecy, the false prophet, and satanic deception, with the voice of the dragon. And these are indicative of the man. 666 is the number of the beast, and it is a number of a man. The mark of the beast is those that pledge loyalty to it. So how does Donald fit into this? So let's begin with the mark. We know that it's either going to be a mark on the right hand, kind of like I've got tattooed right here, because, the symbolism and everything, uh, or it is a mark on the forehead. We already know that it's not going to be branded into your skin, so it's pretty safe to assume you need to willingly put this message on your forehead to pledge your loyalty. How convenient is it that a hat could sport a message on your forehead? A simple, catchy statement of 4 words. That is it. 4 simple words invoke such a visceral response from anyone who hears the term "Make America Great Again." Some of those responses are going to be absolute disgust, while others are undying loyalty. Now, with the current administration, if you do not have loyalty, you only need to look within the last 2 weeks of news headlines to see what happens to people who are not loyal to this administration. Stephen Colbert is a perfect example of what happens when you don't pledge loyalty to the grand leader. So that's the mark of the beast. I genuinely do think that there's a very strong association with a silly red hat and pledging a loyalty to somebody who may have some signs of 3 specific characteristics. So let's look at that first shortcoming, false divinity. Now, for me, I look at a lot of the things that he says as this was divine intervention. This is God called me to do these things. And you see it most prevalently after the assassination attempt. Now, I am not going to say anything positive about an assassination attempt of a world leader. Um, I can have my personal opinions on it, and I can be really, really upset that somebody made that attempt and we would be living through it. But what I can be critical of is how somebody responds to it. And the response of him surviving this was largely saying, God intervened. God wants me to be here. And I remember the day that the news broke, and I said, yep, he just won. Like, flat out, he just won. That is such a powerful message to a very devout population of individuals. That's a win. In the exact same way that in the first administration, he promised to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, which evangelicals ate up as prophecy coming to fruition. So, do I believe that there is a sense of false divinity that he is spreading? Absolutely, I do. Second shortcoming is false prophecy. Now, if we're looking at this whole Jerusalem situation, he is talking about fulfilling these prophecies to be able to win his first election. And he got a lot of votes from the conservative majority in the South because of his promises to be able to fulfill these prophecies. But now, what is he doing in his second administration? He's talking about turning the Gaza Strip into a Trump branded development. How is that fulfilling the prophecy of the Lord and not lining his pockets and fulfilling the obligations to his brand? So, this is the same man who took a photo opportunity to pose with a Bible, just like the Pharisees and the Sadducees did in the time of Jesus, where you are just speaking the words to seem like you are holier than the relationship that you actually have with your God. So this man who took a photo opportunity to pose with a Bible then used his relationships within business to buy $3 Bibles from China, call them the God Bless the USA Bible, stamped his name on it, and then the regular editions he sold at a markup of $60 each. And then we're not even going to talk about the signed versions of his Bibles that were selling for $1,000 direct and going for thousands of dollars online auctions because of the fact that people have undying loyalty to this man. I didn't realize you could sign a book if you weren't the author. So if we look back at one of those sections of the Holy Trinity, specifically the Son as represented by Jesus, we can easily recognize that it's kind of a slap in the face to God. Just a little bit. Let's go back a little bit earlier in the New Testament, Matthew 21:12. Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who sold and bought there and overturned the table of the money changers. And verse 13 continues, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers. So Christ chased out the merchants of faith. And yet here we stand in a world where man can print a Bible and mark it up to boast his economic status. So Jesus overturned tables, and Trump just keeps setting up table after table after table. Steaks, casinos, social media networks, a Bible, cell phones, like anything that he can peddle. He will peddle salvation like it's a souvenir, and Christians will come just with their wallets wide open. And it's not sanctification by any stretch of the imagination. It is flat out idolatry of a man who claims to be something that he isn't. And what's so frustrating is I don't buy into prophecy. That's not my thing. And yet there are so many analogs that says he will be the deceiver, and many who are called to believe will believe this guy over God. So how can we prove that he's a deceiver? I don't want to get into the Epstein case. I don't. Well, let's just look at the last couple of months. Nothing. I know nothing. I know nothing. I know a little bit of something. It was never me. I never had the privilege of going to that island. Come on, dude. Like, are you really thinking that we are that dumb to not pay attention to you, where now your base is starting to recognize the liar, the charlatan that you have been for such a long time? So when we go back into Revelation and we start talking about the dragon, is not a literal dragon. It is a metaphor of the way one speaks. And it is the The voice of Satan that has boastfulness and arrogance and the ability to think that I'm not a 6, I'm a 7, I can replace God. So the metaphor that's depicted in the verse, it's it's someone who is trying to present themselves as being holy, but their words are poison. So in Luke chapter 4, verses 6 through 7, this is when Satan is tempting Jesus in his 40 days wandering through the desert. And this is one of the times in the Bible where it's referring to Satan talking in the voice of the dragon. And it says, to you, I will give all this authority and their glory. If you then will worship me, it will be yours. The dragon's voice is one that has no authority, but speaks with the entitlement as if they already have it. So the devil promised kingdoms he didn't own, just as Trump promises salvation that he can't deliver. So at the end of this whole thing, I just want to circle back on what these points are. So the mark of the beast to me is not related to Trump directly, but it is a red hat that indicates the followers that pledge loyalty, whereas the number of the beast represents the actions of the beast himself. False divinity, false prophecy, and satanic deception. So the last thing I'm going to say is if it looks like a duck and if it quacks like a duck, I'm going to call it Donald. Okay, that's my sermon. That's my sermon. So, having presented all of that, what I'm curious of in talking about this with you is that is coming from a place of Southern Baptist upbringing, brimstone fire, gloom and doom, end of days. What does the Catholic Church say about the book of Revelation? And I've never actually heard how Catholics view end times.
Yeah, there's when you were coming of age, it was during the whole Left Behind series. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so the Left Behind series was just I can't remember the name of the author, but he wrote several books in the series, and it was basically a particular view of um, of what's known as eschatology, the end time theories of 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 what's going to happen in the final days. So there's so and it's funny because I find it funny because this one guy presents this one perspective, and good night, it went like wildfire. And like I remember going to like Halloween and Christmas presentations, and they were like the most terrifying things. And like
I
I
remember the
remember,
one that you took us to where
in
they
Gainesville,
dragged
man, when they
people
were
from the stage to
screaming.
the basement.
Yeah, yeah, they screamed and they were
People like
dragging
they're
them into
getting
the
dragged to
basement.
hell, and I'm 7 thinking, oh my god, are they actually getting taken to
Yeah,
hell
yeah,
right
yeah,
now?
yeah, yeah. So uh, so I certainly don't believe that. There's and it's funny that one of the things that kind of led me towards Catholicism is I started reading these perspective books. So the perspective books are like 5 views on sanctification, 5 views on the Lord's Supper, 5 views on baptism. And one of the books that I read was 4 views on Revelation. So
They couldn't find the fifth guy.
say again.
They couldn't find the fifth guy.
Yeah, well, no, it just depends on. So what they do in these books, it's kind of interesting, is they'll find someone, a scholar, not just anybody. So they'll find a scholar who holds that view, and that scholar will write a an apology, a defense of that position. And then so if they find 5 academics, they'll then with from 5 perspectives they'll get 5. If they find 4, they'll get 4, whatever. So but then so let's say there's 5. Um, well, the other four will read their presentation and make a critique of it. Um, so, so, so that's basically what it is. It's like, oh, okay, here's my view. Everybody who holds another view critiques that view, and then you go to the next. Here's my view.
So is it kind of like you get 20 perspectives, you get the 5 main presentations, and then 4 people critiquing the one, critiquing the one, critiquing the one?
Yeah, and and that kind of led me towards Catholicism, because Catholicism has a lot of theological diversity within it. I mean, there's so we there's uh there's the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which talks about the church's official doctrine. There's the Compendium of Catholic Social Doctrine in the Church, which is the application of that doctrine in society. So there's a lot of words that have been written that talk about, uh, but we've also got the Franciscans and the Augustinians, and uh, and all these different orders who have different perspectives on on some theological things, and that's not unexpected in the Catholic Church. It's not. It's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, there's we recognize that the Bible is mystery. One of the reasons why we have, we call it the sacred scriptures and sacred tradition, is because we believe that sacred tradition, you got to listen to it as well, because people, if you just read the Bible and then you're like, oh, I have found the perfect interpretation of this, that, or the other thing, then you'll do exactly what happened with the Left Behind series. You'll have all these stories written about one particular thing that may or may not be true. You just don't know. So my general view of Revelation in particular is that the author, the the Apostle John, told us the purpose in the very beginning of the book. And when he said, blessed is the person who reads this, who speaks this, who says it aloud. So, so, um, so this letter, I mean, because that's what it was. It was a letter to the churches from the Apostle John. This letter was designed to be spoken. It's a drama. It's it's designed to be
It's
spoken
metaphor.
by people who speak well. And and uh and then it says, blessed is the one who hears it. So it's one of these things I was talking about, the different ways. It's an effective, right? So it's going from the conative, going from our desire to see the end. We all want to get to the end of our faith. We want to get to the conclusion, to the telos, to the to the very, very end.
You want the destination and not the journey.
Yeah. So what this is it's a letter that's designed to encourage people along the way to the end. So there's and I've mentioned this before. I mean, the Bible is filled with figurative language. So whenever you say that, like, the hand of God, or he was or you talk about the voice of God, right? God spoke and there was this voice. Well, the reason we talk about the speaking and the voice and is because we have to bring something into humanness in order to understand it. So, does God have a hand? I mean, there's
Probably not.
Catholics believe that
Not what we know.
that for a period of time, God had a physical hand because he chose to embody himself in the person of Jesus Christ for a period of time in Palestine. There's but other than Jesus having a hand for the time that the Son of God was embodied within him, there's God doesn't need to reach out and grab anything. He has no need to to hold on to anything. He doesn't, when God walked through the garden, there's I mean, if God is everywhere at all
The
times, why
will
does
of
he?
God and the will be done.
Yeah, so a lot of this language is figurative language, and there's there's this it's called sensus plenior, and sensus plenior is the greater meaning. So what most Protestants follow is they believe the Bible in what is a historical grammatical text. So if you want to understand the Bible, you have to understand what the words grammatical, what the words of the Bible say, and what they said, what it was intended by the original author and the original audience, right? So that's you're trying to figure out what was this one guy saying to the people that that one guy was writing to, but which is true. So that's very important. That's very, very important. It's called exegesis. It's very important to understand the words and what the intended message of the author and who he was speaking to. You got to understand that. But the Bible's a unique book in that it's not just a book. It's a library of books. And it's a
Right.
library of books that was written over thousands of years. So there's also a Catholics believe there's a divine author who was working through all those people in all those different times, using all those different words to try and break through into our humanness in such a way that we can understand who he is. And so the 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 mystery of God is revealed throughout the Bible. There's so when you look at so anyway, so that's the way that I read scripture. I read scripture so that I can understand what the author was saying and what was going on at that particular time, at that particular place in the world, and who was he talking to, and what were they meaning, and so on and so forth. So, like Revelation was right when the trials and tribulation, when Rome, there, you got to remember in 70 A.D., the Romans literally sacked Jerusalem
Yeah.
and you know tore the entire temple down, sacrificed a pig on the altar, burned everything, and that was the first genocide of of uh, the Jews by European society. Is the Romans kicked them all out? They're gone. There's and so so there was this tribulation, and there was tremendous fear in the hearts of the of the people, and it's at this very you know crucial time in history where we're kind of like pivoting from this from God manifesting himself in human form. Big period of time. So what John is doing is he's writing down a vision that he had, revelation, a vision that he had. So he had this vision, and it's like, man, in order to have that vision, it must have taken like a few hours of time for him to like experience everything there. And then, it took him a couple weeks to like, oh man, I got to write about the dragon. I got to write about the pregnant woman. I got to write about all this stuff. So, what was John trying to do, and what was God trying to do? And I think they were both trying to do the same thing: encourage the people to persevere in their faith. That's what he was trying to do. I don't think he was trying to tell us that there's going to be dragons coming and there's going to be horses coming through the sky. And these are all figurations of language that, but if you put it into the context of that, literally the third verse of that book. So right at the very beginning, he says, blessed is the person who, who speaks these words, and blessed is the one who hears these words. So what it was is it was Shakespearean theater. So they would get this letter, and then someone would read this letter, and all of this fantastic language and all these beautiful images coming out of it. So the person who was reading it would be blessed, happy. They would be like, how can I read this better? How can I be the best reader of this book that I possibly can be? And then the people are hearing and they're like, wow, this is amazing, because in the end, God wins. It's encouraging people to persevere in their faith. So, so, so just from a big picture perspective, I don't give a whole lot of thought to. I mean, we thought there's Hitler could have been the Antichrist, Khrushchev could have been the Antichrist, Stalin could have been the Antichrist. There, I mean, there are all kinds of people who, who, uh, who have been, more deceptive and more insidious than Donald J. Trump. I'm not saying he's a great guy. Again, I voted for him because I think he was better than the alternative. That's like the only reason I voted for him. Not because I like him. It's because I had to choose between the squishy turd or the crumbly turd. But it was still, no matter what, I was going to eat a turd sandwich. So it's not like I'm defending the guy in really any way, other than saying that now that he's the president of the United States, his success is our success.
Yep.
And
And that's kind of where this is where I've been, like, to a certain extent, I'm not trying to be, oh, what's the word? I don't want to be like submissive to everything that's going on. I don't want to be passive about the fact that, I mean, there's nothing I can do. There's very little that I can do, and bitching does nothing. But at the same time, it's like, dude, how I'm not viewing a lot of the things that you're doing as America's succeeding. I'm really not seeing that. And I need you to be better at your job so that way America can be better. And it frustrates me seeing how many of his shortcomings, uh, and very, very, very shortcomings, are prevalent. And the the I think the biggest frustration, especially with people in my generation, after we had the conversation the other week about, lack of religion with people in my age group and younger. And most of us were raised in it because in the 90s, there was the vast majority of people that associated with Christianity. And I think that it's getting to a point where we're all old enough to have recognized, like, yeah, this is what we were raised on. How on earth are people still thinking that this guy is anything depictive of what he's saying? And why is it that people are okay with this guy who is just very clearly being dishonest about a significant portion of who he is? Now, are there policies that he says that he does and he does? Yes, there are. There's a lot of things that when it comes to him holding himself accountable to the things that he should be held accountable to, those are very, very troublesome for me.
yeah, there's and there. I mean, the only thing that I have to offer is that's the world of politicians. And I think that
Yeah.
Donald Trump is the worst of that lot? No, I really don't. I think that there are other politicians that are worse and worse liars, worse. So everything that you describe, but that's a that's the realm of politics. That's the realm of politics. That's it's a bitter, nasty game, and we have entrenched, um, the this two-party system, so deeply. It's like, I was listening. I can't remember who it was. Somebody was there's you talk about a backroom deal, right? So we're going to do a back room. Well, all the committee rooms in Congress literally have back rooms. And there's a back room for the Republicans and there's a back room for the Democrats. So every
Yep.
committee room has two back rooms, and the Democrats go into their back room and the Republicans go into their back rooms. And that's where back deal done is done. And they talk about the cloakroom.
That's where government happens.
Yeah. So off the floor of the House and off the floor of the Senate, there are two cloakrooms. There's a Democrat cloakroom and there's a Republican cloakroom. So it's not just that it's this ideology thing that we've got two parties. It's literally in the iron and marble of our institutional buildings that if you are a member of a third party, where the hell do you go?
Yeah.
Where do you go to make your deal? Where do you do
You're
you like
literally
go
left
back?
out of the conversation.
You're just completely left out of the conversation. So 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 you know there's yeah, I mean I could go on and on about this politician or that politician, and but it doesn't do it. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve anybody. I don't think to to try and um, use someone else's bad behavior to excuse Donald Trump's bad behavior. I'm just like, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a, but that that is the nature of of politics. And why do
The
people?
beast?
Yeah, there's yeah, and are there are
I had to.
but you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of people on that are part of that core constituency of his that that absolutely believe that, and they see his near fatal attack as evidence of providential protection, and there's I mean, I used to, uh, so like in the army, you know, there are, every commander comes in and they've got their own little vision of how they're going to command the unit, command philosophy, whatever. Um, and you know, every so often, you get somebody who has a command philosophy that is so intertwined with their evangelical faith that they believe that God called them to lead those men at that particular time, and uh, my perspective is that is dangerous. That is totally dangerous. I don't want I don't want some commander saying, "Well, I had a dream last night and God told me to do this," and so he tells us all to go, "Hey, we're going to take this hill or we're going to do this." I want somebody reasoned, rational. There because in the first place, war is just a horrible thing, and and there's uh so the notion that you know God is on one side or the other, where it I'll use the you know what's going on in Gaza right now, and it's like, oh my goodness, there's the whether I'm for Israel or for the Palestinians has nothing to do with, wow, these people are suffering, and
Yep.
and and the only answer to suffering is to reach out and to try and heal and to provide comfort and to provide uh, to bring some humanness um, into a very inhumane circumstance. But war is inhumane. It's inherently inhumane. I mean, if you just you know ask your AI about the bombing of Dresden, the firebombing of Tokyo. I mean, there's look at what went on in the former Yugoslavia during the Bosnia war. Look at um, there's so
Cambodia.
yeah. There's
Yeah.
I was you know it's it's so when we went to war with Japan in World War II, we always talk about it, and this is true. This is true. They attacked us at Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. But what we don't talk about is in July of 1941, in July of the anniversary just went by, we took all of the assets, the financial assets that Japan had in the United States and seized them, just like snatched them. They're no longer yours, they're ours. So we stole
Yep, and we're going to put
everything that
all your people in internment camps.
they're, yeah. And, and then, however many days later, 150, I think some odd days later, they attacked us. There's, but, the notion that taking all their money wasn't an act of violence, wasn't one nation seizing all the assets of another, isn't an act of war that is just not a military act of war, but national power being exercised in the financial domain. There's
This is why it's called a trade war that we're in right now, is because it's a financial war, not a violent war.
yeah. So I mean, I recognize that war is just a horrible, horrible thing, and there's one of the unfortunate realities for well, I'm going to change that perspective. One of the fortunate realities is now we see what war is, but so we see the inherent evilness that results from war, and but interestingly, seeing it doesn't doesn't just it doesn't make anybody less interested in driving towards war. Nobody is like looking at the pictures of Dresden, Germany, and being like, wow, we just burned like all these neighborhoods, tens of thousands of civilians dead, an entire city just absolutely decimated. And, uh, and, by the time we saw those photos, I mean, it was like it had already gone. Now we're seeing these things like as they're happening,
Minutes
and
after the fact, yeah.
yeah, and so the whole uh, political aspect of social media, that's why cyber is now a domain of war, because we wage war using the internet. So like I opened up my newspaper, my local newspaper from this morning, literally this morning, and there was an article about people starving in Gaza, and they used this photo, but the photo was a photo that's being circulated on the internet as if it's Gaza, but it's not. It's Syria from like 13 years ago. So they took an image from a completely different war in a completely different
Tell a
place
story.
and put it on the internet, says that's what it is, and now it's like literally in my official flippity newspaper as 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 being a true picture of what's going on in in Gaza. So there's so
It's
I
proving that print media is dead.
yeah, it's but that image is being shared all over on the internet as
Yeah,
if
I've seen it a lot on Reddit recently as well, and it definitely is. Um, it's kind of hit a new milestone of depravity for the people who are in the midst of it, unfortunately. And there's um, I was talking this morning about using images to tell stories. And the analogy that I'm going to use is the opposite side of this spectrum. I was talking about making really nice, polished pictures that I call the Big Mac photo. It's what it is, but it's not necessarily what you're getting. and being able to use stories or pictures to tell a story so that way people can have an understanding of what's happening, but not necessarily having it be the exact truth. It is a informative truth, but it is not a literal truth. And, in the world of marketing and as a business owner, that's something that I have to live with on a regular basis because I need to sell a product and the product has to be a little bit more than what it is. And unfortunately, when it comes to combat journalism and war reporting, that same thing can wind up happening. How can I sell a story as opposed to what can I do to tell the truth that's going on? And a lot of the times you can sell the reality of what's happening, but you might not necessarily be selling the truth.
Yeah, I talk a lot about the GWAT generation, the Global War on Terror generation, but you want to talk there's you want to talk about so like Vietnam, we were told that if Vietnam fell, then all of Asia was going to become communist. And Vietnam fell, and all of Asia is not communist. So, so that the whole thing, literally from the beginning at the Gulf of Tonkin, the whole thing was uh, was a just a lie perpetrated upon the people who fought in that war by their government. Well, there's I mean, the global war on terror was a righteous war when we were attacking the people who attacked us in Afghanistan immediately afterwards. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we got to go into Iraq or to Iraq. What the heck does Iraq have to do with what happened to us on September 11th? Well, nothing, but they have weapons of mass destruction. No, they don't. And
Got to find the WMDs. We got to send all of the investigators, and they will find the traces of WMDs.
and I mean, there are there are people in our country who went on 9, 10, 11, 12 deployments, watched watched so many people die, watched their friend. They went through everything that you see in these horrible pictures. They went through,
And then they come back with cancer because of burn pits.
and it's so so my view of war is that we need to stop. That there needs to be, I think there needs to be an immediate ceasefire everywhere. And everywhere people need to think about the dignity, the inherent dignity of human beings, and and uh and and come to a resolution to these territorial disputes, these cultural disputes, these all these all these issues of humanity without losing our humanity. And that goes back to my idea around artificial intelligence is we've got to look at this through as a story of humanness. So that but the so the way that we perpetrate ourselves upon the rest of the world is a story of our humanness. And war is the worst chapter of every human story. There is no there we like to romanticize the American Revolution or romanticize the westward expansion or romanticize World War II or or we try and romanticize
And people
war and
fail
make
to
it
look at the casualty numbers and not just casualties in lives, but the casualty in humanity lost.
111,600 Americans died in the Pacific theater of World War II. That all of that because we seized all of Japan's money and 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 introduced ourselves into a war that they were fighting in what was called French Indochina, which is today it's Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. So those three countries, France invaded, and then after France invaded those countries, Japan invaded the countries that France invaded. And we got mad that Japan invaded the countries that France invaded. So we took all the money away from Japan for invading the countries that France invaded. Now, where is France? I mean, is France like, what are they doing in Cambodia
On the other
today?
side of the planet, right?
You know, there's so 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 when I look at that number, 111,600 American human lives. Forget about the firebombing of Tokyo. Forget about about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Forget about all that stuff, right? That's just the 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 Americans who got onto a ship after they left their farm in frickin' Kansas, and they had this beautiful life, raising hogs in Kansas, and they left from there, go to basic training, get shipped off out of California, and they die on the beach of Iwo Jima, and 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 that's that that kind of insanity is uh, has to stop, and um, uh, and if there's if there I mean there I got to admit the way that Trump talks about war is pretty reasonable. I mean, when he talks about the war in Ukraine, he's like, look, there's a lot of Russians dying, there's a lot of Ukrainians dying. They die every day. It doesn't make any sense. We need to stop people from dying. He's on a gaggle in on Air Force One, just sitting there being peppered by questions from reporters, and they ask him about, how do you feel about the images coming out of Gaza? And he's like, how do I feel? There's How could anybody look at those images and not? I mean, unless they're like unless they're like so cold hearted or completely nuts, I think is what he said, and not feel just terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all this stuff that's going on, and for me, man, there's we talk too much about war. We romanticize war too much. There's nothing romantic about it. There's nothing good that comes out of it. We certainly shouldn't be, you know, trying to insert ourselves into another war in Europe. We shouldn't be trying to insert ourselves into another war in Asia. There's because we don't need to send any more pig farmers from Kansas somewhere in some far flung battlefield because we think it's romantic for men to die for their country. There's there's nothing
Well,
romantic
that
about
seems like a really good segue for us to end on a sweet note.
it. I think we said we're going to do table talks or something.
Yeah, so if you've been around for the podcast enough, you know we do table topics. And what we're gonna do tonight, we're gonna change things up a bit because we're trying to keep our ADHD brains on task. So we're now gonna have our just desserts be a wonderful topic that neither one of us prepared. This is the disinterested third party. So that way we can always end an episode on a good note. So, Table Topics is a great card game. If you need conversations with family, they have a whole bunch of different topics that are available, and this just happens to be the family dinner conversation. So, I know some of yours are great. Um, what is the grossest thing that you have eaten?
Oh, um,
Is
this
it going
I
to be
don't
the
even have to
cobra
think about it.
venom
I don't
tequila
even
in
have to
Thailand?
think about it at all. So it's
Because you're going to go to Bullet, aren't you?
no, that's not that bad. there's there's a so I was in Thailand and they made this hooch. So the hooch was like this homemade moonshine whiskey, right? In a in like an egg jar, like a pickled egg jar, or pickle jar
Yeah.
or whatever. And then so there's this whiskey, and then on the inside of the whiskey jar, they had a dead cobra. So they put this dead cobra into um into the hooch. So it's dead snake flavored whiskey. And then they had a ceremony where they brought out a live cobra, and the snake fighter goes out and gets it to hood up, and he catches the snake and he kills it, and he cuts off its head and drains all the blood from the snake into the hooch, and literally like goes and squeezes it down like that so that all the blood from the snake goes into the
Well, you got to
hooch.
get all the good bits.
And then he cut out the venom sacs from the snake's head and squeezed the venom into the hooch, stirred it around, and I was there with the commander, so we were kind of sitting at the front of our unit. So they poured out 2 shots of it and came and gave it to one shot to the commander and one shot to me, and I was like, and now all these people are looking at me, and I got like no so it's this warm hooch filled with dead snake and snake blood and snake venom, and I drank it, and you know how like when you get like your mouth is bleeding, it's just this iron
Yeah.
nasty. So it was just disgusting. It was so yeah, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that was the worst thing I ever consumed. I hated it. uh and and I don't know if it gave me any kind of. That's the thing, is they thought it would give you. They claimed that it would give you vitality. Um,
Yeah. Everything is for your vitality.
yeah,
Oh no, this is good for you. Yeah. We've been doing this for a long time. This is good for you.
yeah. So that's
This is a tradition.
so that's mine. There. Hopefully yours isn't the squirrel that I served you in Boy Scouts.
I tell that story enough at the shop, and I don't think we've had that story here. So here's the kind of lying asshole that my dad is. Um, so, so I'm what, 10? And so dad, Steve, he is with the scout troop that we're a part of in the Boy Scouts. And all the scout dads are stoked to have an Army Ranger instructor be the guy who can teach. Oh, yeah, he can teach them how to tie knots. He can teach them all the bushcraft stuff. He can teach them awesome things. So at some point, I had 3 earrings in both ears, and they kicked me out because it was against dress code. And they lost Steve as well because they kicked me out. Joke's on them. So we're having this. It was a Boy Scout jamboree. It was one of the camping
Yeah,
events.
and everybody was earning their survival merit badge. That was the big
Yeah,
thing.
there, there's like 20, 30 kids that are out camping in North Georgia wilderness, and you've got a couple of adults. And there's this day where Steve is in front of everyone. And he's like, okay, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you got to know what you got to eat, because if you don't eat, you're going to starve. And sometimes when you're out here, you don't get the choices of chicken nuggets and any of the Dairy Queen that you want. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And out here, there's an abundance of squirrels. Now, here's the thing. We don't have the time to teach you kids how to, cut them up and prepare them and hunt them. We don't have the time for that. But we do want you to know that squirrels are edible. So we came out here earlier. We caught a whole bunch of squirrels, and we got them all prepared for you. And here they are. So they put out this entire tray of little tiny bits of meat that had been cooked. And Steve looks at me and he's like, Chris, come up here. You're going to show them all that it's okay. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that at
Oh.
all. He's like, it's okay. It's okay. You'll be fine. No, I don't want to do this. But now there's a whole bunch of kids looking at me, and if I'm anything, I am a victim of peer pressure 100% of the time. 100% of the time. So I have my dad telling me it's okay, all these kids looking at me, and a plate full of squirrel that I don't want to eat. And I'm like, so I eat this. And then all the other kids eat it. And I'm forced to think that I am eating squirrel. And it's this horrible, horrible, terrifying experience. Traumatizing. Traumatizing. Clearly, I still remember it. So, so we get home, and I hear him talking to my mom about, oh yeah, we got all these chicken wings and we prepared them early so that way the kids would have the confidence to go out and kill squirrels.
Oh, it was a hoot. There's a
Which, to your credit, I could probably kill a squirrel now.
yeah, and there's but there's can you imagine what parents would have said if I would have actually had you guys catch
Oh,
squirrels and kill them? And yeah, yeah, yeah.
we would have earned our badges
You earned your badges already. There was all,
authentically.
I mean, because you had to make snares, you had to make there's
We had to purify
yeah,
water.
yeah. So all
Yeah,
those
a
things
whole.
you had to learn how to figure out which way was north without a compass. Uh, all that stuff you went through everything that was required to earn your survival merit badge. There's but you ate fake squirrel.
So, do they did they give merit badges for lying to your kids?
Probably. That's Eagle Scout material there, man.
Oh, I gave up way too early then. No, I'm kind of I've always been an adventurous eater, but I've never really thought things are super super gross. There was a show that was on the Travel Channel a while back called Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern. And he has this really, really interesting perspective of if you are going to experience a different culture, the best way of experiencing a different culture is through their food. And the issue with your culture is your culture associates things are gross. So in your mind, you're never really thinking of what that first bite is going to be like, and it always comes as a shock. So he has this mentality that you have to eat things twice. The first time is the shock to the system, and then the second time is the expectation that you can actually have of what the food is going to be. And I remember I went to sushi one night, and that was like, okay, well, I've never had octopus. That's kind of a weird thing. Let me try it. And the first time I had it was, not the most exciting, but then I had it a second time in the same meal, and it's like, okay, now I can understand it. The texture threw me off, but now that I can get past the texture, the flavor's pretty good. Um, I think the worst experience that I have ever had with food, though, was additionally a sushi, and it was the first time that I ever ate eel. And eel is so eel's interesting for me because I used to have pet eels. I had a saltwater aquarium and I had a couple moray eels. So I always associate the pets that I had with the food that I ate. And I had not only gross eel, but I had bad eel. And I have never been so violently ill in my entire life because there is not the idea of eel being a little bit bad doesn't exist. It is either good eel or you want to stay as far away from it as humanly possible, which I did for 15 years after. And I was up until probably 3:30 that night praying to the porcelain god, just like, please let this pass. Let this be done. I'm hugging you so hard, and my entire body is just sweating because of how horrible this experience is and how much my body is just rejecting it. So it was literally 15 years before I would eat eel again, but I was forcing myself, okay, it was a horrible experience. Maybe I can have a better experience. And then when I had it a second time, it still sucked.
Yeah, and that's a pretty common story. The people that it's not the food that was gross, but they got so sick eating it. It's like I know people who will not touch tequila because they got so drunk on tequila that they just were vomiting all over the place. So they're like, oh, tequila. They can't even
Yeah, you
say
had bad tequila. Don't buy Jose Cuervo. Buy Patron.
yeah, they're when you
Have a little sipping on the extra añejos so you can enjoy some of that complexity and don't be like one shot, two shot, three shot floor.
yeah, it's so funny. There's when you start buying really expensive liquor, you really start to appreciate it more because like when you're young and you're like, oh, let's go get a fifth of Jack Daniels, and you're just like shot. You're just trying to pour this stuff down, but then you're like, oh, this is so delicious. And
Yeah.
there's and I was watching a show about the this guy who's got a company at another small business, but he makes those huge square um ice cubes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that they so he's got the special process, and they carve them all, and then they keep them cold, and they send them uh, restaurants and bars, so that you got a perfectly clear, great big cube or a ball. Sometimes they shape them into balls. There's but but yeah, there's such a big difference when you're like, oh, uh, I'm going to sip this and I'm going to enjoy it and I'm going to let the heat and
Yeah.
the yeah there.
I got kind of ruined because like that was the first time that I mom ever bought me vodka. I had no reference point because we didn't go out partying, and you guys are always the advocate of if you want to try something, be safe at home, and we'll provide if that's something that you want to do. And I told mom that I saw an article or an ad for Grey Goose in GQ, and it was the first time that I was just a sucker for good marketing. And I said, hey, this is the thing that I want to try. So I got started out with top shelf vodka. And the first party that I ever went to, they got me drunk on green apple Zima. And the difference between how I felt the next day, I just immediately said, it's not worth the headache. It's just worth the money. And then you've always been the advocate of drinking nice and sipping, so I was always exposed to that. So when it came time to like buying whiskey, oh, you're gonna go spend $20 on a bottle of Jack? Okay, well I'm gonna go spend $80 on a Balvenie Doublewood because it tastes good.
Yeah, there's and there I got to admit when because I don't consume alcohol anymore. There's and I don't regret not consuming alcohol. But
Same, yeah.
I do miss bourbon. I mean, I really miss bourbon. The experience of just having a nice three fingers of neat,
Yep.
warm, uh nothing but really good
I
whiskey.
have this conversation so much. I do not miss alcohol, but whiskey is that
Yeah.
girlfriend in high school that just moved off to college. And it's like, things were so good. What got us to not work? Oh yeah, that's right. Seizures.
And now on Pearl Street, there's a local distillery that has a tasting room on Pearl Street. So I have walked past this tasting room. I don't know how many dozens of times, and every time I go, I'm like, oh man, I'd love to go in there and just
Yeah, I know if I'm given, 2 weeks to live, okay,
yeah,
I
yeah.
know what I'm doing with those 2 weeks. The first week is going to be a lot of scotch, and the second week is going to be a ton of acid.
there's there's Yeah, there's here this is an interesting story. Because I didn't know that this happened. So you know that Deion Sanders is the coach here at CU, right?
Yep.
So primetime Deion Sanders. I
Neon
yeah,
Neon.
yeah. There. So I think we were in Germany uh, when he was, and he was playing two sports. He played both football and baseball. Um,
I think he was in Atlanta when we were in Georgia.
I think so. Yeah. Um, so anyway, well, he's the coach here now. He's in his third year, and during the off season this year, he got diagnosed with bladder cancer, which is a really aggressive, very, very, yeah, it's a bad diagnosis to get. So, uh, so he's like, there's all these things you can go through chemo, you can do this and you can do that, and none of them. But the most radical treatment is to just remove the bladder, just to really just remove the whole thing. Um, and it's a radical procedure, but it's usually pretty successful. But most people don't do it, and by the time they get to that point in the treatment, it's already metastasized someplace else. So they have a problem. So he's like, hey, look, I got life to do. I'll figure out how to do whatever I've got to do, but I want to live. So remove my bladder. So they removed his bladder, his urinary bladder, and they replace it with a sac that they made from his small intestine. There's which functions well as a bladder, as a as a holding area, but there's no sphincter. There's nothing you can control.
So you don't have bladder control
You
anymore.
have like zero bladder control, no sensation that you have to urinate because that's caused by pressure on that
Yeah,
sphincter.
yeah, yeah.
So there's and he was he was really private about it all while he was going through the surgeries and everything. But now that season started up again, he felt obligated to say something to his team. And once he said something to the team, you know it's going to get out. So he may as well just release the information to everybody. So he's at the media event, and he's like, yeah, I'm just like my grandson. I depend on depends. And and it's so funny to see a guy. He's just like, hey, this is the circumstance I'm in, man. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm not gonna feel sorry for myself about it. I'm just gonna, and
I was talking this morning again with Nick about there is a certain amount of freedom that comes with that kind of vulnerability, and we were specifically talking about how he didn't know anything that I was teaching him, and he was typing in front of me, and he's like, "Oh man, I really hate typing in front of people because I'm not really good at doing any of this stuff." And I told him, I was like, you know what? That is the best place to be in. And what's great about this is it doesn't judge you. And me, I am a very proud person. I have a lot of pride. I try and present myself as the expert in anything that it is that I'm talking about. And if I'm not the expert, I am curious and I will shut up and listen because I want to listen to the experts. But I take a lot of pride in that. And what I am the most self conscious about is when I don't know things and I'm trying to pretend like I know things. Like that whole fake it till you make it mentality is I'm not built for that. Um, and one of the most encouraging things for me was actually telling AI, I don't know how to do this because that's something that's hard for me to do in life in general is just sell somebody else like I don't know. And as soon as I started getting comfortable talking to AI about the things that I didn't know and the things that I wasn't comfortable with, I became way more comfortable talking to people about it too, because you realize like, oh, that's a human experience. And circling back to you, humanity and maintaining the human aspect of who we are, uh, being able to be that person that says like, yep, I'm gonna piss myself. It's what it is. Uh, People are going to get to that point in their life But when they get to that point in their life and they think, oh man, if Neon Dion can get through it, then I can
That's
get
exactly
through
right.
it.
That's exactly right.
I think that that's a really powerful place to be, and I think it's really cool that that's actually the decision that he made, was to confront it, because there's so many people that wouldn't.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Oh well, let's try the chemo first, and then if that doesn't work, then we'll try something else, and we'll try something else." And
Yeah.
for a lot of cancers, that's a good strategy. That's a very good strategy for, it's like your grandpa had thyroid cancer, and it's a very survivable form of cancer, and um, uh, so there's different. But apparently, this is, and again, I'm just taking the news article at its face value. I'd have to like research, but after I talked about that photo from Syria, there's, you never know if the newspaper's telling you the truth anymore.
It's all that print media you're reading.
It's only my local newspaper, man. There's
Oh, and you trust Boulder, Colorado's
and
news.
and it's so funny. I was talking to my neighbors because I told you last week, there's we had
The cops that had knocked on the door. Did they find that guy?
uh, no, and there has not been. So, like, literally, there are 10 cop cars in the parking lot out front. There's a whole, like, unit of cops coming by in riot gear with uh, bulletproof shields in front of them, and they come right down the side of the building. So there's like this massive standoff in the apartment directly below me, and there's no, I mean, there wasn't anybody in the apartment. The apartment was empty, so they were it was, it was an abundance of caution. I understand the caution, right? But not one jot in the local newspaper about it. No news, no article about it. And I'm like, you guys are the mouthpiece of the local government. You don't want anybody to think that, oh, there might be dangerous activity taking place in Boulder. We don't want to make the people afraid, that, or let them know that there's armed intruders or whatever.
Or mountain lions?
No, now the mountain lion, that's literally on the front page this morning. Literally on the front page of the newspaper, the headline, the very top of the front page, is the story about the mountain lion. There's so one mountain lion.
Honestly, to me, I'd feel less safe about a mountain lion that you tell me about than a guy on the loose. Because that mountain lion will do the same thing over again. The guy, I would argue, is probably trying to just get away.
Oh, yeah. There's
Yeah.
So how
So,
on earth? How do you make a headline story out of one mountain lion killing one small dog, which is a tragedy? I believe it's a tragedy. But then not even a buried article on page 9 or whatever, you know?
well, that'll be a world problem that we'll have to solve next week.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
This was a
in the
productive episode.
meantime, yeah, we see we're starting to get on track. You know, if we put some structure in our lives, we can actually get through these episodes in a relatively, streamlined way. Um, if you guys listening enjoyed what we did today, because it was definitely better than what we've been doing in the past, we would love it if you gave us a review on YouTube or Spotify or Amazon Music, which is where you can find all of our podcasts, as well as a place that you can follow us and share with your friends if they need any kind of examples for families that are on different sides of the aisle that can still have conversations about things. You know, I can tell my Christian dad about how I feel about Trump, and it's still fine. We're still in a good place right now.
Oh, we definitely checked the politics and religion box today.
We're going to be the conversation that HR does not want you to be a part of. So if you want to be a part of this conversation, share it with your friends, share it with your family, follow us on the socials, and until next week, be well, guys.
Take care. Peace.